Welcome to the Healing Collective podcast, where we explore the paradox of healing.
And we broadcast all of the healing codes to support a world of more heart-centered humans. So do you want to check in first? What's around follow-up from yesterday or?
Yeah. I mean, basically what's been happening for me is I started, I've been dating this guy and I'm just doing my drama. I'm doing the trauma that I do. I've been like scaring myself. I literally called Lauren for coaching last night. I think a lot of my like codependency patterns are less like life-threatening feeling. But they're still there. Like my same stuff still happens. My anxious attachment style stuff happens. And my internal compass and like my young, vulnerable parts, like they still got a lot of stuff. And I'm still learning how to really be with those parts of myself and nurture them. And yesterday I was losing my shit and Lauren was coaching me and helping me reattune over and over again to these needy parts of myself that didn't necessarily get all their needs met when I was young. And this relationship I'm in, I'm getting a lot of needs met, like more than I'm used to, and not all of them. And I think actually even trying to get all of my needs met by this one person. Yeah, I just have these, I just still
be more
skip
specific.
over stuff.
Be more specific, because what's happening today? Where are you today?
I mean, Today I am like soaring, like I'm feeling really good. I got a bunch of coaching yesterday, and today it's one of the first days of sort of my new career, which I've been doing 2 jobs for the last 2 years, coaching and selling coaching and doing my job at Megafood. And I actually gave notice and quit my job at Megafood. And today was the day of no Megafood, and it was only coaching. I facilitated my first YPO, like all by myself. I've done some with other people, but I haven't done it on my own before. I had like a coaching sales call where the person like bought coaching on the spot. And then I just had 2 new clients that were having their first coaching call ever. And I feel so energized. Like I feel so aligned. I feel like I could just like keep going. I feel really happy about how things went today. And it feels cleared out. Like I'm not trying to do way more in one day than I can actually do. Like I did how much I'm doing, and it felt like the right amount. And I'm going to be done. It's 5 o'clock and I'm done with my day. And that feels better than working till 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that. So at
last
this moment,
night though, you said I'm clear. What were you clear about compared to when we coached?
Yeah. I feel like I'm like seeing my reality more clearly. Like I overwhelm myself with work sometimes. Sometimes I do that as a hero move. In primary relationship, I skip over my young ones and I co-create me having to wake back up and drop back into my body and actually nurture these like young, vulnerable parts of myself. And it's like the soul child of the 8, like needy, clingy, desperate to be liked. Like I just have young ones that need a lot of stuff. And I'm more available than ever to give them that and to be discerning about who I'm sharing my time and energy with. And what I feel clear about is I'm not done. Like I'm still on this journey and I'm still learning about it. And I feel okay about not having it all figured out in this moment, and just knowing that I'm still kind of doing what I'm doing and that I'm still learning about it. And I think I'm still co-creating these experiences because I'm just still developing better habits and different skills and like having to come back to myself over and over again. I just am doing less blame and more like, oh, I'm doing what I'm doing and I'm not done doing it yet. And I'm going to probably keep doing what I'm doing until I stop. And I guess I just have some more self-compassion that I had last night. Last night, it was feeling like really bad, really big, really fucking serious. Very much like, well, I need to make a decision. Like, am I going to break up with this person? What's going to happen next? Like, I have to figure this all out right now. And it felt like high stakes. And that doesn't really feel that way anymore.
Yeah. I think I may have told you this, but I've recently been thinking a lot differently about codependency.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had this, and I've kind of mentioned it on here, but maybe directly, just like basically the inner dialogue in my head is like every single person on the planet, I believe, has some form of codependent relationship right now, or has been in one or probably multiple codependent relationships. And I'm like, if the universe is for us, with us, and ahead of us, and these are the principles that I understand about how things work, like, why it must be of service, right? And then these like really conscious people that like pretend that they're not in codependency, or it doesn't show up sometimes, like I just don't believe them, I do think some of them have accessed some really cool levels for sure, and I just believe it has to always dip at some point into what we would call codependency. And I met, someone from the conscious leadership community. I've met him a few times, but we had coffee. And it was like he like filled in a blank for me. And he was saying that he did a medicine journey and he went through his whole maternal line back 4,000 years and was like a really cool thing. And that he saw his ancestor, knowing that this like big imbalance between the masculine and the feminine was coming, and that they were preparing for it. They knew their whole kind of ancestral lineage was about to migrate and live somewhere very cold from somewhere very warm. And they were anticipating this, and they decided they wanted to do some things to preserve what they knew and what they understood. And especially as she was like a maternal leader. So then he said that there was a shaman, and then this masculine ancestor and a feminine ancestor. And together they did a ceremony that they took all the power of divine feminine and they preserved it in codependency and like put it like a code in their bloodline. And that the way that they passed it on was to like sing this song to each other. And that the idea was that one day that codependency would be what woke us up to the divine feminine within us. And it just like literally like just blew something open, because even all the stuff, I feel like a responsibility to this podcast now to like give updates or help, talk about where things have gone with my relationship with Haman, because I have expressed so much about it on here. And I'm like, another thing I thought about is that because patriarchal power is so dominant, there's a way, and he reinforced this, that codependency is not a threat. So it could pass through many lineages because you don't perceive it as powerful, But what I've seen is, and I kind of saw this yesterday in our experience, right? The things that codependency triggers in us, and I don't mean feminine as only feminine bodies. I mean, when it triggers us in any kind of body, it's usually around attachment and needs, and that is a feminine part of ourselves. And so when we can get to a level of awareness where we start to realize like, okay, this is reliable, and this is pointing me to something that's not online in me, that it can help us to really unlock like our power and the ways that we to. Can you?
That's weird. I lost you for a second and you're back now.
Okay.
Instead, we can start to unlock some things where you were.
Yeah, but is my microphone is on, and I'm like, am I recording? Hold on. Like the GarageBand like stopped.
Yeah, mine stopped too. We're gonna have to ask him about that. We'll just record this one this way and we'll ask him about it.
Yeah, so I guess I was just saying, like, it's this invitation to our power and unlocking the divine feminine in us. And and that's really been my journey. And so even though on the outside it's been humiliating, it's been degrading, it's been like painful on so many levels, and like in a way that I thought I couldn't survive. Like, I guess what I see is it feels like I kind of took all the pain around the feminine of my whole bloodline and packed it into 7.5 years in this relationship with this person, and had to relive all of these moments that I imagine, especially my female ancestors experiencing in different times, where they didn't get to access their power, and where whatever it was, whatever the abuse was, or whatever the rejection was, or the abandonment, it was the end of them, or was the end of them fighting for their truth and the highest expression of themselves. And I guess what I could say today in this moment is that wasn't my story. That wasn't my ending. And even though the ending isn't that I get to be with that person or have, because I did have in mind, like I understood this kind of, but I thought the outcome or the reward was to get to be in a healthy relationship with this person. And ironically, the opposite is true. The ending is it completely blew up in a way that I never could have expected. And I don't even know if we can be friends as a result of the way that it exploded. So then it's like, okay, well, the gift is me fully in my power, which does feel true. And I just, went on this trip to Sedona, and I did this big ceremony that it was totally organic, like wasn't expecting it to go this way. But basically, like a few months ago, I called Abby on the phone and I was like, can you facilitate a Zoom wedding right now? This is not a joke. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm downloading some kind of like ceremony between my feminine and masculine. And like, I feel like I need to do it right now. And she wasn't available. So I typed it all. Oh, wow. Did I share this with you?
No.
Oh my God. So it was so powerful. And then literally like some of this like next wave of like payment explosions happened that exact day, like right after I wrote this ceremony. So we actually did ceremony together many, many times. It was like this huge activation of our power and our medicine, this Sedona trip. And mine was first. And it became very clear I was supposed to do this ceremony with myself. Mm-hmm. And at different times, basically it was like me and two of my friends that are all female. And we kind of like took turns, like holding, like there was kind of like a shaman priest role and then masculine feminine role. So I would either be in my feminine or I would switch and be with my masculine, and I would speak it too, and it was so real. It was crazy, but it felt like that I was honoring the union of my masculine and feminine, like coming together. And then that transitioned into like this rebirthing ceremony where I physically birthed, had like the same like orgasmic kind of, like what happened in Jacqueline's journey, like experience, and like rebirthed this complete new version of myself. And so I guess I say all that to say, it's like, oh, dang, like, are you serious? Like all of that was to create union between my own inner masculine and feminine. And like, I can like legitimately 100% say that without every single kind of turn and cranny, like between Heyman and I would not have been able, he's the reason I could even access what my masculine was or looked like. And it was all from like basically not being able to source that from him. So, it's kind of bittersweet. Like, I definitely don't want to be like toxically positive, because the shit was like by far the hardest thing. And I wouldn't really, I don't know if I could even encourage it for anyone else. I don't know if this is a lot of people's journey or what codependency is inviting multiple people into, or if it's me. But, to see kind of the full expression that is available to me now, I really can only be grateful, and grateful for all the tools, because what I can also see is like, a lot of my relationships were like the one with him, and his was just like exponentially, hard compared to those, but the patterns were similar. But because I had the tools, like the conscious leadership tools, like the tools that we talk about on this podcast, the healers that you hear on this podcast, I kept being able to come back to me and come back to the place where I actually had any agency to understand. And the part of me that kept going, that people were like, Lauren, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why do you keep going back to this situation? There was some part of me like, I'm not complete yet. I'm not complete. And again, I thought it was because the two of us were going to, I even had gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, we're not going to be romantic. We're not going to have sex, but we've got to be friends. Like, we've got to be friends. And it's like, that may not even be true. And like to get to that place and be like, oh, like that was the invitation, the invitation was really this higher actualization of me. And then in the ceremony, it became really aware that, at least as a metaphor, the feminine is my body and the masculine is my awareness, my light. And that's what didn't have a full relationship and a union. And that's what was like kind of battling each other. And that's what wants to experience wholeness.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I love that I'm hearing the story for the first time on the podcast. And yeah, like I've been tracking all kinds of pieces with this, like with you all along. And I remember like basically we're doing the same stuff. Like I'm using different people, like different guys over time, but like I am doing the same thing. Like I am exploring undeveloped parts of my divine masculine and divine feminine. And I'm projecting and using guys and those relationships to explore it all. And we've been doing it at the same time. And usually both of us aren't out of our mind at the same time. Like usually one of us is like, has some kind of like stability in the moment to support the other. But I'm just like thinking back to some moments over the last year where when you have said, yeah, like that's your divine masculine that you're noticing over there that you think you need that person for, because like you'll lose it if you don't have this thing, or this part that you think they're not doing well, like the judgments and projections and the complaints that you have about the guy in this moment, like those are your own undeveloped masculine parts that like want some attention and want to get integrated. Like those have been some of the most potent pieces of coaching you've given me, honestly. And like I've been following this girl, Meg McDermott. She calls herself the twin flame coach, and the twin flame Yoda, divine feminine coach and twin flame Yoda. And I got a session with her. It was really cool. And she talks about like, that a lot of people are on this divine feminine journey. Like a lot of women are on this journey and that we're in these relationships with guys and we're trying to like get to this place we think where we're going to be in union with the guy. Like we're going to like end up happy ever after together. And we know that there's some like pull and some stuff that we're working on, like this kind of soulmate energy thing. And we're learning all these lessons. And that we're in separation when we're not like, it's not our boyfriend, or we're like, when we're not in harmony and we're in conflict or something like that. And how she's like, that's all like made up. Like they are just reflections of you and it's about yourself, and any separation is completely imagined because it's just
and it's such a high level of consciousness to like, that's what it has stretched me to like the edges of the universe, I would say. Like, it really stretches you if you go. And that's why I have this kind of like mantra of like, be willing to see relationships through all the way to completion. And you will know when that completion happens. So just like this thing in you, that's like, I need to do something about this, right? Like that's conditioning. Like we've been conditioned, like if it starts to go this direction, we need to end it, whether it's our mom, our sister, our dads or whatever. And it's like, well, what if you really like stepped into like, this person is me and this person is all the things that I don't love or don't accept in myself. And I'm going to keep showing up until like, I don't need them anymore to be that reflection. And not because I made that decision, but because it faded, out of my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my issue yesterday was basically that like, I want the guy I'm seeing to go to therapy and learn context. And I'm like, well, we're kind of like bumping into not being able to talk about stuff, like not being able to understand each other. And I want you to have some of these same tools. And like on a practical level, it's not like a ridiculous request. And Lauren helped me see that when I get triggered about it, when I'm basically below the line, when I'm scared about it, I might skip over like whatever my need is and be like, well, maybe I can control for the outcome of the need if I go and like get him to do something specific. Like I'm feeling right that, oh, if he goes and gets somatic experience therapy, somehow that's going to like create some condition that I can control where I'm going to keep getting my need met and he's going to do whatever I feel like I need him to do so that I'm okay. And that's kind of not clean. And like that he might have his total own path and own tools and own timeline. And that me choosing to be with him means like, can I just continually be committed to being with who he is, how he is, and what he's available for right now, and not needing him to be different or do more than it's possible for him to do. And she had a really great question, which was like, Bethany, because I'm like, well, he's projecting all over me. And like, I want him to take responsibility for some of his stuff, which at its face, like, yeah, that makes sense that I would have that want. And she's like, cool. So when you started with all these tools, when you started actually like exploring consciousness and getting all the support and training and stuff and like going to coaches training, how long did it take you before you weren't consistently like projecting on other people, like having stories about them, having aversions and like getting into stuff where we're sort of projecting our stuff on other people? And I was like, I don't know, 3 years. And she's like, great. And let's call you an A+ student. Like, cause you went for it. Like you went all in and you spent a lot of time and energy trying to master the stuff. She's like, so you want this guy that like doesn't have any of these tools, hasn't had any of that experience, and he's just exactly at where he's at. You want him to just like try to jump into some mastery and start projecting on you? She's like, say, even if it takes 6 years, are you willing to be with this person and let them do whatever they're doing and let him project all over you because he's just at where he's at in his learning, and to kind of take all that and be with the discomfort of that, the unfriendliness of it sometimes? Are you willing to be with all of that and not like have something where you're trying to control him doing all that work and waking up really fast and stopping doing all this stuff that even you, your own self, like that wasn't even possible for you? And it was a really potent question. In the moment, I was like, no, I'm not willing to stay and like be with someone who's going to project all over me for the next 6 years before they figure any of this shit out. And I think it was important for me to get to my no in that moment too. And I woke up today and I'm not going to break up with him. Not today anyways. So, like, I guess I could see it as in this moment, I am today willing to stay in this today and keep learning what I'm learning today. And I feel more compassion for him, which is actually a lot more compassion for myself, because it's all a reflection of me. And there is
right. And when
there's more context for me because
and when you're in that place, you're projecting on him, right? So the other paradox is like, we want them to stop projecting on us and we're projecting on them. And again, like there is this, I hope that we continue to explore this, like both and, right? Where it's like, we deserve better conditions and we're being invited to create those conditions in ourselves first. And, when I look around, like what's true is like most people project on me every day, like even my closest people. But most of those people, I'm holding myself in so much self-trust and like knowing the truth of who I am, that like, I'm actually having these experiences of like, I love you. And I know you're projecting on me and you're just having a moment that you dipped into fear consciousness. You know, what CLG calls below the line, what I call fear consciousness. And it's cool. You're going to be back out of it because I know, I know who I am and I know you're going to see it. But with these people, because they touch this wound of many, many places in time and space where I wasn't, or my ancestors weren't seen or known, right? It's like, I'm so attached. Like, I need you to see me more than I need anybody else to see me, or I need you to meet my needs more than anyone else, because you represent places where that the wound was so deep and was so unbearable. And then the projection hurts like you might as well like shoot me with a gun. Like that's how much it hurts compared to like these projections that I'm like shielding all the time. And that does become unbearable, right? It does become unbearable for the nervous system to like relive those like cuts and bullets that, were so painful at some other time and place.
Yeah. For me, the thing I want him to give me that I'm not consistently giving myself. And this is a paradox too, right? Because we are relational. We heal through relationship. It's okay. and good to get needs met from other people. We want that. And people are complex and we're human beings and we're bumping into each other all the time. And so some people are going to meet some of your needs sometimes, and then they're not. And so we both have to be available and open for other people to meet our needs and take them as a whole person who isn't going to meet all of our needs all the time and might have different needs than us. And we also have to both meet some of our own needs and recognize that even we can't meet all of our own needs. Like we're not just these islands who can meet every one of our own needs on our own by ourselves. And so then we never need anything from anybody else. So the way like, that's not really, it's both.
It's a weird thing. When I think about, I always have to go to like my relationship with you or my relationship with Abby, because I do think we get these kind of like special relationships that for some reason transcend our drama and, you know, are just kind of like magical in that way and like show us like, you know, something that's possible. Right. And I'm like, I can't think of one time that I'm like, Bethany should do this for me, or like, I need her to do this for me. And there's times that I've called you and I was in need, like emotionally or financially or spiritually. And like, you have never not immediately done whatever you could to meet that need. And like, I trust that that's true, you know, and that's like the paradox too, right? Is like, and at least, you know, and I think you would relate to this, like in my romantic, whatever you want to call that type of relationship, that version, you know, it was like, I have all these needs and I want you to meet them. And when I ask you to meet any need, you reject meeting any of them. Like you're not really willing to meet any or like maybe 2% of them, you know, in a way that doesn't feel safe because there's nothing reliable or consistent that I can count on in that container. And then again, like this, I really think, because interdependence is literally the linking of the both and.
Yeah.
It is literally like non-duality. You have to be able to hold that biologically in your body, somatically, spiritually, and cognitively in order to experience interdependence. So this dance of codependence is the step before that. And it's the two sides of duality trying to find the both and then banging up against the ways that they can, the ways that it's like, no, this is a very dual, right or wrong, fear or not fear place. But actually to really even understand what we're talking about at the level that it's true, you have to be able to cognitively, spiritually, and somatically hold what non-duality and interdependence is, you know? And that's why I say, like, I think you and Abby in certain relationships have at least given me a vision of that and who I am in that space. So then I can compare it and bring a little bit more of that, you know, to places where it's so much more difficult.
Yeah. Relationships like this are like a gift. And also, we are co-committed. Like we are
that is
so co-committed.
Right.
And so it's like, it makes sense to me that like me, you, Abby's somebody for me and I'm someone for Abby too. Like that we're all kind of like decided we're going to be committed around these things. Like we're interested in like using relationships for healing and understanding. We care about these things together.
We're committed to those principles and we're committed to each other. And then my mind goes to like, what is it that made me choose that level of commitment? Because you know what I'm saying? Because I would say I was that committed to Haman. I would say that he wasn't available or willing, or that wasn't in alignment for him to be committed in that same way to me. So we didn't have the same commitment to the type of relationship we wanted to be in. And then we used very different tools or had very different schemas for how we like approached.
Yes. And that's a really important thing to become aware of, because if we're wanting to build more of these types of relationships, like I do, even though it's below the line and controlling, I do think there's an intelligence to me going, got it. If I'm going to go a lot further with this person, if I'm not going to create the type of relationship that I most want, I want to be co-committed. And he doesn't even know enough about the tools to know if he's in or not. So from above the line, yeah, I want you to check stuff out.
what I would say is that, and this is true for both of us in different ways, but what I'm feeling in this moment, I don't think you fully know outside of, you know what you're committed to from like spiritual practice, but I don't think you know what you want in that type of relationship fully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
this is
you
what
haven't had
Copilot
so
says.
many things. So it's like, and that's the other part of codependency is it does, if we keep using it for our learning, I think it does teach us like, okay, this I could deal with for 20 years. This I can't, this is unsustainable. And then as we move through that relationship or create other ones, we have greater clarity about what's an integrity for us, about what do I actually need that's unique to Laureyn or unique to being human. And that has to be available for me to fully like thrive in this experience.
Mm-hmm. And then there's another paradox there because it's like, well, if we're going to have these conditions, like it has to be like this for me to be okay. That's not how most of life shows up. And so it's like, we can't really control for those conditions always being met either. So, yeah, that's a paradox.
So how many can we control for in our own nervous system though?
That's in our own nervous system.
Yeah, I would say this, I want to say this on this podcast because one thing that's probably very different from whenever we started that season 2 journey is like my nervous system has healed so much, even the end of season 1. And I'm like, oh my God, like 98% of all pain and suffering and drama is literally because my nervous system didn't feel this way. And so now, like with everyone I'm coaching, I think this is kind of what CLG is pointing at when they're like, it's all about context and content. But I would say, no, it's not, because you can do context and content from a nervous system that is afraid, So that is the first step. But the second step is the context is, where's your nervous system at, and settle the nervous system. And then from there, you're more likely to see things from an entirely different place,
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why I'm a context coach. I work for Conscious Leadership Group, and I'm also a somatic experience practitioner, and I get both. I get context coaching and I get SE, and like, these are my tools. This is what works for me. There's many pathways to this. These are the ones I like. What I found was I got really far, like changing, shifting, learning, healing. And then there were some places that I would get so overwhelmed and my nervous system wasn't healthy enough. It didn't have enough capacity to actually use the tools. And so I believe that we'll see this too, like even in leaders and CEOs that we coach, like they'll get really, really far. And then there's these sticky things, these sticky wickets that aren't moving. And it's like, yeah, go get some SE. Sometimes I think somatic experiencing or some version of healing your nervous system. You can do this with medicine work. Like you can do this interpersonally with co-regulation. You can stick your face in a cup of ice water. Like there's a million ways that you can work on your nervous system. But I think having a nervous system that has some capacity and that's being tended to gives you the capacity to use these tools to their fullest value. And there are some nervous system elements of CLG.
Well, I don't think it's just like use it to their value. I think it's you are perpetuating, any one of us is perpetuating fear consciousness if we do anything from fear consciousness. So if you take a tool, CLG, somatic, anything, and you're doing it from fear, control, superiority,
you're weaponizing it,
duality, you are unconsciously creating a weapon. And that is, I'm guilty of that. All of us who are in this field, and so the more that I'm like, oh, I'm committed to being a healer, this is a part of what my purpose really is. Like my number one job is to be the medicine and to be able to hold that different consciousness in, as much and as many times as possible. So I'm not another person like perpetuating that pain and that suffering. Yeah. And being willing to repair if I do that anyway,
Yeah. And we got off the phone and I was like pretty quickly aware, like I kind of settled. And then I was pretty quickly aware, like, oh, I want to take responsibility for projecting on Arya and trying to control him.
And he actually was on a plane to go down to Florida. He's doing like relief efforts. There was just the hurricane down there. And I couldn't get a hold of him. Like, he's on a plane and I'm like, when you land, can you blah, blah, blah. His phone was dead. And now he's in a place that doesn't even have power sometimes and doesn't have electricity and no service and stuff. Like, it's literally all messed up. So we've sent a couple of texts here and there. It's just like, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. But that's it. And so it's interesting because I'm sitting with it, and even the discomfort of
because
projected all over him.
Well, you can even use taking responsibility to discharge your the
discomfort of the learning of it. So I'm actually holding it, and I'm kind of like, like seeing how complete I can be with it and stuff like that. And so we'll connect when we connect, but I also want to repair. Like, I want to repair. Like, I did that. Like, I approached with like, I need you to do this and I want you to do this. And, he was making a joke about like, he was like, it's like a terrorist. You're like, do this or else. And I'm like, oh yeah. Like, the first thing I called Lauren for was like, let me explore this terrorist persona. But like, yeah, I was making it kind of black and white and ultimatum-ish.
You were just in fear, like deep.
I was just super scared.
Fear, and your nervous system was freaking out. And then you were grasping, and that grasping is violent. It's violent to ourselves and it's violent to others.
Yeah.
The Conscious Loving book, like this, and it was really hard. I mean, it was really hard. And I think I went too far with it a little bit, but one of them is love is wanting for you what you want for yourself,
wanting for them, what you
wanting for them, wanting for other people, wanting for a person, what they want for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry. And, like with him, and I think I like got that mindset, but what I would do is like, oh, he wants this thing. And it was actually painful to me, or it was cross the boundary for me. And I would skip over my boundary because I'm like, well, that's what he wants for himself. And I didn't center what I want for myself. Mm-hmm. But so now it's like wanting for me what I want for myself is actually the work. But this idea of like, I would say in parenting and with Talon has been like the greatest teacher, because luckily in that relationship, it's easy for me to want for him what he wants for himself. It's easy for me to like see that I have certain expectations maybe of who I want him to be or how I want him to show up. And it's easy for me to let go of those if he wants something else. And it's really easy for me to accept him just the way he is and not make it like wrong. And to feel like how easeful that makes our experience. Mm-hmm. And so I just think about like how if we start to like reframe being in a relationship from some of those mindsets, but then we have to decide, like, if I want for you what you want for yourself, where is the line where I am not, getting the things that I want for myself? And that is the dance.
Paradox.
Right. And that is the dance of finding the place where two people can both meet, which is what Princess Hemphill, that is their quote around boundaries is, boundaries are the place where I can love you and me at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you sent me something last night and then I saw it again on my own. It was, I forget who it was.
The holistic
psychologist. And it was talking about this. And it's like, yeah, you're going to have different needs that are actually in opposition, and actually just communicating them. That is the thing. Like, maybe that person can't always meet the need, but being able to communicate it, be known and seen in it, and like some intention around being available to try and to not like abandon yourself. Like that something just about surfacing them and saying them. And remember, if it's all a projection on some level, surfacing and saying them to our boyfriends is us surfacing and saying it to ourselves. So it's actually communicating with yourself too about what your actual needs are rather than skipping over them.
That's a big thing. Yeah.
So using Aria to keep noticing where I feel like my needs aren't being met is going to be of service for me, even knowing what my needs are and surfacing them for myself, which is where I skip that sometimes, or I'm like, well, I shouldn't have needs or whatever.
Well, and what I see for me too is like sex and touch is such a big has been such a big way that I got my needs met, and still touch is very big for me. You know, I guess we all have these like love language. When sex was present or touch was available, I might have had, you know, all these other needs that are being met or all these other ways that my boundaries are getting violated. But because that thing was present, I was willing to, you know, sacrifice or make all these other things because that felt like such an important need. And I think that there's a way that when that stopped and when there was like a boundary around that, you know, it gave me some space to see other things and other ways that I was not getting my needs met. And I started just feeling like, okay, like at this point, I can't really access much of anything. So is this even a relationship at all? Is there any kind of relational foundation available? And so I make up that like you having this long distance relationship the way it is, like actually is allowing you to, you know, separate from things that you might just like be so potent, you know, because you got them all the time that you wouldn't notice these other things.
Yeah. Yeah. And for anyone following along, it's long distance. And so I don't even get to see him that much. And so I get to sit in all this longing and all this stuff. I kind of get a front row seat to my experience of my needs.
And when we let go of, this has been my aha lately, and I hate it at the same time. There's a part of me that's like, oh, it's so fucking stupid. But it's like, ironically, right? The universe is interested in our highest expression and expansion, especially if that's what we're interested in. So it's not going to give us the relational experiences that give us like the necessary
no lessons.
Well, no, it's not thinking like, oh, Bethany wants a boyfriend and a partner, so I'm going to give her like the cookie cutter, like social media, you know, what brand of what she thinks relationship is. I'm going to give her the exact type and specific conditions of relationship that are so directly and perfectly aligned to the lessons and the expansion and the awareness. And like, when I really, really tap into that for both of us, it's like, that intelligence, the depth and the specificity that like the intelligence knows us and can like match us up with those lessons is like mind blowing, you know, and that's love. Right. And this is my resistance is just like, fuck you, you know, why can't you just be nice to me? Like to the universe, I'm like, if you love me, why would you give me all these things? Like, this is so hard. Like, you don't have to do that. But the paradox is I love you. So I'm giving you like the exact most specific things for your very, very highest expression, even if you can't even fully see that that's what it is. And so it's like, if we believe that more, we saw that that's just the nature of life, then we might approach every single challenge, even collective challenges, right? Like hurricanes or political challenges from like a really, really different perspective. If we truly, truly believed like life is benevolent and life wants us to live abundantly. And so it is giving us this in service of that outcome.
Yeah.
I want to tell you a story. It's kind of like tangent.
Let's go.
Okay. Well, backstory is, okay, so the Instagram woman you're talking about, the Yoda, twin soul Yoda or whatever.
Twin flame Yoda. Yeah. Divine feminine coach and twin flame Yoda.
She was posting something and she's like, it's like the Mary Magdalene Chronicles. It's a book. Did you see her post that?
I sent you one thing.
I don't know if it's something you probably did send it to me but I do follow her now. It's basically, she's talking about this book and Isis being a mentor for her. Mary Magdalene is a mentor for her, which this year I've been a student of the Sophia Code, which Isis and Mary Magdalene are a big part of that. So I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I'm in Sedona on this trip and I'm at this place called Crystal Magic, which I just have to say is like the most amazing store. It's like crystals. It's like got to be the most amazing crystal store in the United States. But they have like all these cards and all these books. And I felt like so called to the books. And I'm just like, kind of like feeling into it. And then something told me to like reach behind like 3 books and grab this book. And there was a book behind it. And I pulled that out. And it's this book that she mentions on her thing. And it's basically like in mystic traditions, they believe that Mary Magdalene and Jesus were lovers, and they actually they had a child together, and that she was actually this like mystic that was really high up in the mystery schools of Horus, which taught the sex magic of Isis. So literally, like, this book is about her.
Bing, bing, bing.
Right. This book is about her using, I mean, I know if you're like Christian in the way I grew up, this is like anti-Christ or whatever, but the book is about her using her sex magic to support Jesus's mission as a revolutionary and like their journey or whatever. So I'm reading about one of their connections or whatever. And she's like, I should get the book, but basically it's like,
is it Mary Magdalene Revealed? Is that the book?
No.
Okay. You should check that one out too, maybe. Okay, keep going.
So she talks about how they become telepathic and they become ecstasy and bliss, and that they have this energetic interaction that doesn't include any type of
Sounds familiar.
So I had this experience. I had that exact experience. And it was like my body just shook. Like I've never had anything like it. It was otherworldly. I had no frame of reference. It came out of nowhere.
With Haman. Like you had this experience with Haman.
It came out of nowhere.
Was it like a year ago, you think?
Yeah, it was like around early December of last year. He kind of transformed into another person for that time. And it was like, yeah. And I remember leaving and being like, this is showing me a vision of some possibility that I sensed, because I've always been giving this feedback to people like, sex is supposed to be more than this. Like this has been my kind of like mantra. Like, we are just not touching the surface of what sex is. So then you can't see it that well here. Have you seen my new tattoo? I can't remember.
Yeah, but the blur is on. So the people at home, you can turn off your blur.
Let me see if I can turn it off. So I channel my tattoos. I kind of get a date that I'm supposed to get a tattoo. They're usually like either kind of a closure of some time period or an initiation or like a map for another time period. And I started drawing, like, first I started painting this eye, which I like, maybe I've seen it, but it was not like a symbol that I see a lot. Then I started painting these like snakes going back and forth, and the ankh like kept coming up or whatever. So I show it to the guy and I'm like, I don't really know what this is about. He always kind of like fixes it up, and puts something on my arm. So I'm like learning that basically that the school that Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary like apparently like trained in to do all these things, and even to like have a virgin birth, was Egyptian schools that studied like Isis, and they were called like the left eye of Horus school. And like that's what this is like the left eye of Horus. And then I'm reading, I think it was yesterday, and it's talking about that the way that you generate this ecstasy or this sexual energy that creates this field is that you have two things of energy going up left and right of your spine, and that they crisscross like snakes. And, that's like really where
DNA.
Right, exactly. And it's like Kundalini is the symbol, but the way that they described it, I'm like, oh my God, like that's what, this is like pointing me to some kind of like sex magic thing. And like, I haven't had sex in forever, and I don't even feel like I know what sex is anymore. Like sex is just not the thing right now. So I'm like, all right, universe, like, okay, we'll see what this is all about, So, and then to have this ceremonial experience, like birthing experience, where like there was like full ecstasy, like through my body. So I just wanted you to know that, and just how kind of like affirmed, I guess, I felt to like open this book. It was like the third page. Like I was like,
and it was like, when did you put this tattoo on yourself? You downloaded this when?
Oh, in August, or like early August.
Yeah.
That I downloaded the tattoo, and then I got the book like last week, so. Yeah,
and we're in beginning of October now. So
right.
Put the tattoo on you 2 months before we even knew what it was about.
Right. So that's just happening. And I assume that that will be something that comes up a lot or a good amount,
Cool.
that exploration. And then I'm about to start some coaching with someone who's, this is like orgasm, relationship to sex is like their forte, you would say.
Mm-hmm. Exciting.
I think it's a lot about sex with myself though, and there's a part of me that's like, cool, because I can source a lot of that on my own. And there's definitely a part of me like, am I never, ever going to have
and just like all of the paradox that we just explained,
right.
How could it not be true that there's not something for you there? Like,
right.
Yeah.
The other paradox is like, of any time in my life, I am the least interested in any kind of like partnership. Like I couldn't be more or less interested in that than I am right now, which kind of feels like freedom because it was such an important thing for me for so long.
Yeah, it's not a compulsion like how it has felt in the past. And it's not tied up in like the thing with Haman that it sounds like agency and freedom to me. So like a pretty ideal and curious place to, open a new chapter. Fun. So that's the update,
that's season
folks.
3. That's season 3. I feel like this is the end of season 2. We're closing a chapter. We're going to start bringing on guests again. We're new and improved for season 3.
And we're still
if these were like what'd you call them? The what files?
The Lost Files.
Yeah, I wonder what that one will be.
Yeah, we'll see what season 3 becomes. But yeah, you'll start seeing episodes dropping regularly. Any closing words?
I just want to speak to Laureyn, the version of Laureyn that you probably heard in every single podcast, really every podcast you've ever done, but especially this last chapter. And I just want to tell her that I love her and I'm with her. And I know that there's so many times that you feel lost and things don't make sense. And it's almost like unbelievable. And no one really understands. No one even really understands what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. And you don't have any mirrors to like reflect back to you these experiences and you feel alone. I just want you to know that I see you and I know you and it's not in vain. And you will be so grateful and so humble when you really, really look back on all of these episodes. And I'm so grateful for your willingness to be emotive and to show your vulnerability and to show your brokenness to the world. And your courage to like share your journey, because if it doesn't serve anyone else, it served me. And so thank you.
Thanks for listening. We welcome your feedback. You can email us at healingcollectivepod@gmail.com. Our website is thehealingcollectivepodcast.com, at Healing Podcast on Twitter, at Healing Collective Podcast on Instagram. Special thanks to Ethan Luck, who produces. You can find him at Ethan Luck on all platforms.